Welcome to Fully Engaged with Jennifer N. Sutherland, where we explore thoughtful conversations about navigating the intricate world of leadership, learning, and organizational development.
My guest today is Johannes Sundlo. He's a visionary HR leader and AI enthusiast known for transforming workplaces through people-centric strategies and cutting-edge technology. As a sought-after speaker and mentor, he inspires organizations to embrace innovation, inclusivity, and the future of work. So he's a perfect guest for our podcast. Johannes, welcome to Fully Engaged.
Thanks a lot. And I blush a bit on that sort of intro, but still, yeah, thank you.
Well, all well-deserved. It always feels a little weird when somebody else says it about you, but all very well-deserved. So excited to have you here today. The podcast is called Fully Engaged. So I like to kick off every conversation and basically just ask, what does fully engaged mean to you?
Fully engaged for me is to really embed yourself in a topic or in someone as well, but like to be your full self with whatever you have in front of you. Basically, that is for me being fully engaged.
I love that. So with the background and the work that you've done, workplace culture is such a key component of the work that you do. How would you describe workplace culture? Because it means a little something for everybody. And then could you give us an example of something that stands out as like a just really good workplace culture or something maybe that just stands out as a embodiment of workplace culture for you?
But so for me, culture is sort of it's everything and nothing. Like it's hard to grasp sometimes what is culture. But for me personally, like I like to think about culture or workplace culture specifically. Uh, um, I like to think about it in a way that is it's the sum of all parts, and really mean all parts as well. Not only like, oh, we have some fancy cultural values in the front at the front desk or in the reception. It's the sum of all parts. Everything you do, all the people, all the processes you have, all the policies you have, everything connected. That sort of makes up the sum of what's ultimately the culture for me. And one can argue is that true or not, but for me, it's really important that everyone who enters the company, they push a culture in their own unique way. So it's really the sum of the people, but also what the people do. So in essence, that is how I like to view culture. And I mean, there are so many good examples of how to build a great culture as well, or what's a sort of token of great culture. But I think it's the important part for me when it comes to culture is that you follow your principles basically. Like if you as an organization, if you say like we do this and you don't do that, well then you don't really have a culture. You just have a culture of saying stuff that you really don't do. So for me, like the following up part, like and the honesty and the transparency, that's crucial for me. And I've seen that in many workplaces as well, where it comes to like that you say something and you live by that as well. And whether it's like, so I worked at Spotify, for example, like music was obviously a big part of that company, and they really live by that. So that's one example, but also like it could be a production company that says like we treat our people really well, and they do, and that is also a great culture, that in my view. So yeah, it's more agnostic in regards to what industry or whatever fashion or brand it might be. It's more what you do and how you live by that, from my point of view. But I know that like there's so many different views on this as well.
Yeah, workplace culture is definitely one of those things that there's, to me, not one single sort of definition of it. So I like to ask the guests that question. And I love that you said that culture is the sum of its parts. And one thing that you said that I thought was really interesting and key is that, everybody in the organization sort of pushes and pulls related to the culture. So it's about the people in the organization as much as it is the values and the processes, the technology. And I kind of liken that to the team building theory, the forming, norming, storming, performing, right? So you have a new round of leaders or a new CEO, that culture is going to change a little bit, whether it's intentional or not. That person brings their personality and their style to that. So I thought that was really interesting and a perspective that I haven't really heard related to culture. And I really appreciate that. Each individual sort of is a mechanism of itself within the culture.
And I really like to view it more like or like a puzzle. So for example, if you have a puzzle, like you bring your own piece, and that piece needs to fit in with the rest of the pieces, hopefully. And sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Like so, you're from a different puzzle, and that's fine as well. But maybe this is not the puzzle for you then. But the sum of all the puzzle pieces needs to make a coherent picture, and the picture can change sometimes as well. But it's still you need to bring that or I like that perspective, I should say, in terms of thinking about it. But once again, like I know there's so many different opinions and views on this as well. So, but that's how I think about it, at least.
Well, that's why you're as a guest on this podcast because I'm interested in your opinion. So I appreciate you sharing that. I have another question for you related
Yeah.
to you mentioned leaders. How do you define effective leadership in today's context of just rapidly changing environments, things consistently, being in sort of a state of complex, ambiguous sort of approach? How do you define effective leadership development?
I really think one of the sort of most important traits you can have as a leader is to understand that change is constant. Like this is an ever-changing world, and if you're like, if you have a fixed mindset saying like this is the way it is and it's the only way things will work out, I think long term you will be unsuccessful in today's world, and that goes for leaders, it goes for individual contributors as well. But I think it's extra crucial that you as a leader you have this flexibility and adaptation into okay what's going on with the world, and also in regards to that also meet your people where they at, because people will also experience this change to different degrees. Like obviously different companies, different industries, different organizations have different challenges, of course. But I think as like a general rule of thumb, I think that um, um, flexible mindset is really key.
I think that's such a great concept. It's something I'm sort of obsessed with lately. I have known the concept of VUCA for years, but then in the past probably like year to 2 years, I've just really focused on it. And
Yep.
for those listening, if you're not familiar, VUCA is a acronym that stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And it really relates to that sort of changing environment and how can a leader be prepared for all the things that they might not even know. They might now know what questions to ask now to prepare. Things might change, or there might be 3,000 things that can impact those decisions. So, when you say leadership, effective leadership is really about flexibility, that really resonates. When you think about VUCA, it talks about flexibility, resilience, the ability to sort of adapt as needed, and that's a huge component of what I've seen to be effective with leaders.
Yeah, I strongly agree as well. And I mean, everyone likes change until they need to change themselves. So like having that mindset of like I know that this is coming, even though you know it's coming, and even though I sit here and say like, okay, need to have this flexible mindset or growth mindset, if you would like use like Carol Dweck's research in regards to that. But I mean, even I struggle with that sometimes. Like I said, like everyone loves change until they have to change themselves because change is hard, but still having that mindset that the world is uncertain, like who knows what will happen in the future. Well, no one basically, and we also shape the future. And if you go in with that mindset that I have the ability to change it, I have the ability to influence the future, because we all do to some extent, then that sets a sort of mindset and a direction that I really like. Is it easy? No. Like I once again, like I say it, I struggle with it myself. But I truly think, and the effective leaders that I've seen, they do that, and they also dare to call out when someone is not moving fast enough or changing fast enough as well. And that daring component, I think, is the second part of this as well. Like it's one thing to once again like have this flexible mindset, but you also need to you need to lead with heart, but also call out when things are not going well. And like one of my best friends, or one of my friends at least, like Christopher, like he embodies that for me. Like he's super assertive when he needs to be, but also he's so curious about like what's going on with the world and how do I as a leader adopt it. And he leads a big construction company. So but it's still the curiosity and the flexibility that he has combined with his assertiveness where he needs to be assertive. I think that's a winning concept.
Yeah, the human approach, right? Being able to still be curious and ask questions and do things for the right reasons. I mean, I always like to think about good intentions when things are happening. Like, what's the intention behind this? Is this
Yeah.
Is it selfish? Is it meant for the organization? Is it hopefully going to help the employees? Things like that. So when a leader can be flexible, and I love that you mentioned curious. Curiosity is one of my favorites. I pick a one word every single year, and I focus on that word for the year. This year, it's yet. I actually put it on this necklace, so I will wear this necklace all throughout the year to focus on my word yet. But one year was curious, and that entire year, it really was in me to ask questions. It just kept it top of mind for me to say, "What else? What else? How can I learn this? How does this
Yeah.
approach this? Where does this go?" It was such a really fun way to approach life in general, but also at work. It really gave me a lot of opportunities to do things and get involved in things that I never probably would have otherwise.
No, and I love the idea of having like one word every year. Like I have a similar thing. It's not a word, but it's like I have one project. I want to challenge myself in one way the upcoming year. And that's been like it's been taking me in various like paths throughout the throughout life. But it's I like for me like curiosity is my sort of base at home. Like I want to challenge myself and learn new stuff because yeah, I'm just curious by nature.
I love that. I'm in learning and development. I always say that I wanna learn, like, I get stifled if I don't have an opportunity to learn something new, and so it's kinda similar to curiosity, the need for more knowledge of something, like, even something that I might not be super originally interested in, but let me find out a little bit more, so I love that curious is your word. I'm gonna picture the word curious when I picture our interaction today in our podcast. Um so organizational culture, when I think about engagement, so the podcast is called Fully Engaged. What role do you think organizational culture has in related to like employee engagement, employee performance? Like what is culture's sort of relationship to employee engagement?
But for me, it's the glue that holds it all together, right? Because you have, hopefully at least, you have a vision and a mission, and you know roughly what the organization that you're working for will do. But there will be times, for example, or I hope that there will be times when your manager is not around to tell you what to do and how to do it, for example. But you have that overarching direction for the company. And then for me, then the organizational culture, or it's the glue that holds it all together. Like for example, if you want to grow your business, for example, you know that you want to increase revenue or whatever your KPI is or your goal is. But you can do that in various ways, right? And you could take shortcuts. You could cheat. You could do unethical stuff as well. And for me, what pulls that back is the organizational culture. Like, how do we operate? What do we do? How do we treat each other as well? Do I call my vendor and yell at them at the phone, for example? I could do that, but does that align with the culture at the organization that I'm working for? So, I mean, we are constantly sort of bombarded with these micro decisions all the time when we work. And thank God our managers are not around to like influence them all because then why, like, why am I hired?
Right.
But I think the culture then sort of steers how do I act in those different situations. I have the overarching goal. I have the culture to lean back on, and that steers how I do stuff as well. So that's how I tend to like it, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. In the beginning, you mentioned something about, how culture is sort of like the sum of all the parts. And to me, that is definitely a component of it because it's about how you do the things. Like so many companies have cultural values and you'll see them, like you said, you might see them at the front desk. You'll see them and you'll hear about them at new hire orientation. They might be on the company's RFP for their sales teams. But the translation into what does that mean? How does that influence behavior is key. I know my company, we rolled out new cultural values 3 years ago, I think. And yes, we had a big splash. We had a great kickoff. It was an awesome launch. It was fun. We got like everybody involved. But then I created a practical guide to living those values every day. So things like, do you call your vendor when something goes wrong and yell at them? Or do you take a different approach? Do you consider asking some questions first? Back to curiosity. So I love that it's not just like the personality of the company, but it's also how do we interact with each other? How do we make other people feel about interacting with us as a company? And I think that that's really key.
Mm. And I actually and I 100% agree with that. And the acting part, like how do you do stuff as well? And I did my thesis around culture at a clothing company in Sweden, and what and we because they've launched like organizational values like a couple of years back. They did a whole project around, as you mentioned, so like defining this is the values that we have and this is how you embody them. And they did a lot of trainings around that, like how do you embody them, like when a customer is entering the store, how do you meet them, how do you greet them, what do you do, and whatnot. And but they hadn't talked about that for quite a while. So that was like 5 years ago when we did the study. And when we talked to them, all employees could instantly, when we talked to them, just, we could probably have woken them up in the middle of the night saying like, what's your values and how do you act when a customer enters the store? Because it lived on and on and on, even though like from a central point of view, they hadn't communicated this at all to anyone in 3 years. But still, it lingered so hard with the people because like they learned from each other, and everyone said like, oh, we think we have an education or a training somewhere like in the back here, or a folder somewhere with like the how you should do, but we just teach each other. And no one knew that the company officially had stopped working with the values. And for me, that says something as well. It's what you do and how you do, and you like, because this was so ingrained with the people who were working. Other people's looked to them and said like, okay, this is how I behave here, and then that sort of transpired and or naturally sort of fueled the values, even though it wasn't communicated anymore.
That means it's part of the culture. It's part of that fabric. It's like embedded, like you said, in the organization, and everybody just did it, just lived and breathed it, And some companies are so good at doing that. And we know some of the big companies, some of the big names that you'll hear, but I'd love when there's smaller companies. Like there was one vendor that I worked with years ago that ended up getting bought out by another company. But that company's culture was so strong. It was such a strong influence of what they did and how they interacted with each other. And it came from the CEOs down, and everybody bought into it. And even though a bunch of people have like moved on to different companies, we all, even me as a customer of that vendor, still talk about how strong that culture was. Like it was just so pervasive in everything they did. It was just such a cool experience.
What was their secret? What was the secret sauce?
So I think part of it was the leaders. They were really, really two smart guys that created this company, but they were very humble, and they spent a lot of time working with their employees as they slowly scaled. So they didn't get super big, super fast, and just sort of went, let's just focus on revenue, but tell people we care about the employees. They actually cared about the employees the entire time. The CEO actually ended up writing 2 books, and I have them actually sitting behind me because they're 2 of my favorite leadership books that I've ever read. One of them talks about basically how to do better work. How do we work better together? What are some of the things? And it's not like very cerebral concepts. One of them, he even says something like, share before you're ready, which I love that idea. Be vulnerable, share something before it's at the final, like, draft, and get input. Make sure you're still on the right path. Make sure that you're getting input from people. And it's something that he did as a CEO. He would be very vulnerable and sort of transparent in conversations about things he's working on. It was probably one of the coolest like cultural company experiences ever. It would make a fantastic thesis, to be honest. So if you decide to go for a double, triple degree,
I'm good. Like so, but yeah, for listeners maybe, yeah,
right,
uh,
exactly. Maybe that's a different podcast, a different
yeah,
day. Maybe I
exactly.
can make a CEO on the call. Uh, I like to talk about people first approach. We both talked about culture is about, the sum of its parts. It's about the experience. People first, that approach of making things people centric, people first. How can leaders sort of balance doing that and making sure their employees and people first, but also with innovation and sort of the speed of technology and innovation and change? How can they balance making sure things that they're also caring for their people in that process?
But I think ultimately caring for your people is about truly caring for your people. Like, um, it's one thing to say like I care for my people, and a lot of people or a lot of companies say that they do, but they don't really do it as well. But for me, like having that people centric mindset is truly, for example, then giving harsh feedback. Like if something is not working, then you call it out. You say that, hey, this is not working, and or like what happens here. And not only because like it's so easy to think that this people-centric approach is just handing out balloons and ice cream, basically saying like, oh, we care for our people and here's the balloon. But for me it's quite the opposite, actually. Like where I think you're truly people first is when you say like, hey, this is not working, or I feel something is off, like you haven't been yourself lately, what can I do to support you? And I think if you have that mindset of that's the leader's role in that, just not handing out ice cream, but also being, the dentist, if you might call it that way. Like when things go awry or like it's not working, it's. I mean, a dentist is a more or less invention, right? They care for our teeth as well, and but I don't know anyone who loves going to the dentist. Oh, I happen to have one dentist friend as well, and she loves going to the dentist because she's into it. But it's like most of us, we don't do it, or we don't like doing it, but we still do it. And I think if you have that sort of holistic mindset of someone saying like, I care for you, both the good parts but also the bad parts, and I will to as large extent try to help you wherever you might need help. I think if you have that approach as a leader, you truly have that people-centric approach. But I think a lot of leaders mistake it for like, oh, I need to be nice. It's like sometimes it can be quite nice to be like very upfront with things are not going the way they are supposed to be going, because that could be the wake-up call someone needs, for example. So that roughly that's how I view it as well.
So I am an adjunct professor. I teach graduate classes and undergraduate classes in HR, learning and development. And one of the newest topics we've been talking about in class for the past probably 2 years is AI. And I know that you're a huge AI enthusiast. So let me ask you, as we approach HR, people, leaders, things like that, what do you see? How do you see AI impacting HR and leadership and culture?
How long do we have? No, that's
Here's the rest of the
nobody.
podcast. Let's go.
No, but it's so I mean, I see it impacting it in a lot of different ways. Like, but I think it's important to differentiate between like long term and short term. Like short term, like it's all good right now. I mean, yes, AI is here. AI is impacting some people, you know, and organizations to some extent as well. But I like to think in trends, like, okay, or I like to plot trends more or less, like, okay, what is happening right now? What
Right.
innovations do we see, and where are we heading, basically? And that's how I like to frame it and think about it as well. So, and when I look with that lens, okay, where we're heading, it will impact us. Like, the more time goes by, the more convinced I am, and the more innovation is sort of unfueled as well, or released as well. The more I look at it, the more I'm convinced that work as we know it, not only in HR, but work as we know it, will change. In what ways, I'm not really certain yet, but it will impact work for some, in some shape or form, and it's already doing that to some extent. And like we talk about culture, like going back to the first part, where like it's the sum of all parts. One thing, like, or one overlooked thing, I think, is a lot of people are now using, for example, ChatGPT or Copilot or
Mhm.
Gemini or whatever they're using to create processes, policies, employer branding documents, job ads, whatever it might be. That is also part of culture. And what happens then now if people are a bit lazy, or they don't get support from their organization in how to write prompts, for example, or how to use these tools properly? Well, it's all going to be a bit like, like everything is going to be just blended because you hand over the reins to ChatGPT, for example. Meaning that when you create all of these processes, all the policies, like they will look alike because you haven't prompted them enough to take in your unique context. It's not you shining through, it's ChatGPT shining through, and now everyone is using that. Meaning that we will just have a lot of ChatGPT companies, perhaps. So I mean that's one of the risks that I see truly with this as well. Like we rely too much on these tools, and we haven't done proper training to get them to a stage where they truly reflect who we are, because we haven't done that work. Like we don't really know who we are, basically,
Right.
or we just rely on the tools to just provide us with whatever information they want to we want from them. So that's then you can talk endlessly around like, okay, this is a big rabbit hole which I'm gladly to jump into as well. But yeah.
But yeah, it's exactly right. Like using those tools, most people use it and the outcomes tend to be very sort of generic, very universal because there's all this information that it's sort of trained from. And so it can apply to a whole lots of different options. And the idea of how to get it to truly reflect your company's brand, your voice, your communication style, your employee value proposition, those types of things. I think you're right. That's a really interesting trend to see where that's going to go. And the information that's in Chat GPT versus Microsoft Copilot versus Google Gemini, if I did the same exercise in the three, how different would it be? Based on who's using those three elements and how easily can you train it? So let me ask a follow-up question. What skills and or characteristics would you start suggesting that somebody work on in order to be prepared for this sort of next iteration and the next longer term trends? What can people start to learn or do now to start being ready for whatever that next sort of iteration for AI is?
So I think the basic foundation, you need to have the basic foundation basically. Like you need to understand. You don't need to be technical expert. You don't need to go to MIT to undergraduate in computer science, but you need to have rudimentary basic knowledge about how these models work. Because that, I mean, once again, like if they're starting now to impact work, you need to understand, okay, what's behind. Just as we try to understand when we hire someone, like what's the motivation, what have you learned? How have you learned that? What did you pick up at that workplace? It's the same with AI. Like we need to understand the basic motivators, the basic knowledge that they have, and we need to have that sort of at least somewhat defined. Once again, like you're not, don't go to MIT if you don't want to go to MIT. Like that's perfect. Like I don't have anything against MIT, but you don't need to go to MIT. But you need to have this basic understanding of okay, this is AI, and this is how AI works, and this is the current limitations and possibilities that AI has. And there's countless of great, great free educations on this as well, like free trainings that you can take online. So you don't have to, pay a lot of money to do it, but you need to invest the time. And this is the crucial part where a lot of people are failing right now. They see it and they say like, "Oh, I'm going to do that in, Q2 is probably a good time," and then they push it further and further along and say like, "Just do it." And do it now and acknowledge the importance of acting as well, because this is not slowing down. So getting that foundation to stand upon, I think that is crucial. And then curiosity serves you well here as well. Like if you are curious and say like, okay, I don't know, I don't know all the details, and I don't know, everything about this AI thingy, but I'm gonna try it, and I'm gonna try it again, and I'm gonna try it again, and that be a bit stubborn as well in regards to using it. And to your point on the leader that you were inspired by, who said like, "Oh, I'm releasing when it's half done." I think that mindset as well is serving as well in the AI, the whole AI world. Like it because it's I don't think AI will truly be fully done. It's an iteration. It's every week there's some kind of iteration with these AI tools. Meaning that if you wait for the tool to be perfect, like this, I'm gonna wait until it's done. Like then I'm gonna
Right.
jump on this train. Then you're gonna wait forever. Like you need to try and be okay with sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, and that's fine. That doesn't mean the tool is useless. It just does mean that whatever you threw at it for in this week that it didn't stick. Let's try again next week. So having
Exactly.
that mindset, I think, is really important as well.
Yeah, when I think about some of those characteristics related to AI, it has evolved so quickly. And I'm a huge advocate. My favorite social media is LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn more than anything else. And because I learned so much from so many people, that's how we found you. That's how I found a bunch of my other guests here on the podcast, because I'm constantly seeking out that knowledge, and AI is all over LinkedIn. And I'm constantly I'm constantly taking screenshots or forwarding things to myself, prompts and suggestions and ideas, and it's overwhelming, but even like the smallest incremental application for it can make a big impact and help anybody feel more comfortable in approaching it and taking that next step and recognizing that. So obviously, we're focusing on some HR stuff here specifically. So do you have an example of how you've integrated AI into like an HR strategy or process or approach?
Oh, I have so many examples. No, but I mean, I've been exploring this topic, like, and I do the same, by the way. Like, I screenshot so much stuff from LinkedIn, or like save it into my Notion library. Like, I do it all the time, and I think it's great as well. And I really that's approach I have myself. Like, share as much as I can to get feedback, because that is the true blessing of being on LinkedIn as well. But when you share stuff, people reach out and say like, I didn't like that, or here's my thinking instead. So yeah, side note. But what I use it for in HR, I mean, for example, if I take a very practical example, so in Sweden we have strong unions, which is, the whole labor market in Sweden is built around that. We have a strong employer and a strong union. It's fine, and it goes way back 100 years or something like that. But with everything that you do, then you need to negotiate with the union. And for the last 1.5 year, I've been using ChatGPT, or our internal tool, then to prepare for the meetings. So I upload my sort of thinking. Here's what we're going to present to the union. Can you please act like an evil union representative, the most evil one that you've ever come across, and shoot down my every argument, find every loophole that I have in this presentation, and give it to me. I'm a grown up big boy. I can handle the feedback, and then it gives me feedback, which then helps me prepare. So I use it a lot to make myself better. That's how I like to use it. Of course, like, you can use it to generate texts and all of that. But what I really like with these tools is that they can make me better. Like, they're not replacing me; they're making me better at what I do. So that's one example. But I have so many examples. but
That
but
is
that's
such a
that.
brilliant example. Like, just, hit me with it. Ask me all the hardest
Yeah,
questions, find all the holes, find the gaps in my logic,
yeah,
figure out how to counter. I love that. So I'm actually teaching a negotiations class right now.
yeah.
So I'm thinking I might switch up. I like, the class starts on Monday. It's a 7-week online class, very, very fast. I think I might switch up one of the activities and have them intentionally use AI to counter an argument in a negotiation. That was brilliant.
No, but it's
Got it.
it's such it's such a good use case. I love it. And also, like, for if you have tricky conversations or hard conversations, they want to prepare for, like, you want to refine your strategy, or you want to sound more confident, or whatever it might be. You can just say like, hey, can you help me with this? And it helps you with that. And I just to have that constant counterpart that is always ready to give feedback,
Yeah.
and does it really constructive, and in a good fashion as well. I think it's marvelous.
That's great. I have an employee that used to report to me who uses ChatGPT quite often. She's an HR business partner, and she would use ChatGPT for like, okay, how can I help coach this leader on this situation? How can I anticipate talking to this employee about an employee investigation or whatever the case is? And so she would use ChatGPT really consistently. And then I don't know where she found it, if somebody suggested or what. She was like, write write a description of me based on my interactions with you. So ChatGPT gave her like a paragraph, like, you are an empathetic leader, you are people first. Well, it was fantastic and it was so spot on. She shared it with me. But then she was asking it questions like, write me a country music song based on your interactions with me. Write me a rap song based on it was so clever, and I had never thought to do that. And I was like, I love this idea. Like, the creativity side of it was super cool and it was based on our interaction, so it'd be like,
Uh,
you know, based
I
on your
I've not
questions and things.
I've not tried that. Like, I've tried, obviously, to like, hey, can you define me? And I found, like, on Reddit, I found something like, can you do a psychological profile on me? Like,
Oh, yeah.
my yeah, to talk about my childhood, basically. And it did, like, and it was spot on as well. It was horrible. But I'm yet to try the musical part, but I will definitely try that. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I just thought it was hilarious, and I'm a big reader. I read, books, like, nonstop. I was like, that would be kind of a fun, like, way to say, "Okay, like, write my biography
Yeah.
based on what you've known about me. Like, help
Yeah.
me put together an abstract or something." Look at us coming up with business ideas.
Yeah,
Look at us.
exactly. Like, this is perfect examples of, like, what we can do in the future as well when AI has taken our HR jobs. Yeah. So
Exactly, exactly. So we've talked about culture, and a big part of culture in my background is inclusivity and diversity. That's obviously a really hot button conversation here in the US. But since you're in the Sweden, I'm feeling like I can be comfortable asking you this
Absolutely.
with your comfort level. So, what steps can organizations do to basically help build inclusive and diverse workplaces? What are some of the suggestions that you have around that? And how do they measure that success? How do they know they're doing a good job of that?
So it's a hot topic here as well, but it's like it's not as hot as in the US, I would say, but still, and it's a tricky one as well because like how do you do it? And I know like I've struggled with it sometimes from time to time as well. Like how do we do that as well? But for me, it's about representation, and it's not only about representation. That's the first step. Obviously, having people to, represented across, whatever it might be, and not only one, not only two. Like do it truly, and also make them feel also inclusive. So it's one thing to say like, okay, you're welcome in, but it's also one or another thing to actually feel like I belong here and I can contribute here as well. And that is a tricky part as well, and that takes a lot of uh, it takes a lot from the leaders basically to create that environment where people feel I can be my true self, and that where I truly feel I can contribute. Not based on who I am, but just for what I am. Like I'm me, and I belong here, and that belonging part, like it's, and I find myself like thinking that we sometimes, we find ourselves in HR thinking too much. Okay, we want to make X amount of diversity hires. Well, obviously that's one part, but it's just one part. It's one thing to look at the hiring metrics and say like, oh, X amount of all the hires needs to be from this and this and this category. But and I'm not saying that that is easy because I know it's not easy, but it's
Right.
still it's easier than having those people who you bring in as well to truly feel welcome and to truly feel like I can contribute here based on once again then who I am. And it goes back to creating that people-centric workplace where you cater for people. For me at least, like so I cater for you no matter who you are. I will look out for you, and I will try my best to tell you both the good parts, but also the bad parts.
Yep.
And I'm here because I'm sort of vested in your interest. And sometimes it also requires for leaders, in my experience as well, to specifically, to call out, hey, are you like, if are you contributing? Like you're quiet? Are you contributing? Like, how do you feel like? And be open and honest about that as well. And it's tricky. Like it's super tricky, especially like if you're like me, like a white man, and you know, I'm the ordinary guy, and not the one you like usually not the one suffering from being underrepresented. And I have to constantly remind myself about that as well. Okay, how do I act? Do I listen to everyone?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's tricky, but nonetheless important. And I'm saddened to see, in all honesty, the development of this as well. I think it's yeah, yeah, it's just sad.
It is yeah, it's continuing to evolve, and we'll see where things end up, but it's been interesting. And I know, like, in my career for a long time, it was, being an advocate or being an ally, and then
Yeah,
probably, I don't know, I wanna say, like, 5 or 7 years ago was the first time I heard the term anti-racist.
yeah,
So, not just being passively not racist, but being anti, and I thought that that was such a powerful way to approach it,
yeah.
and, just kinda took it to being an active level and sort of more assertiveness around it, not just sort of like,
I'll
"I'm
play
not
along.
causing any
No,
problems, I'm
no,
not
uh,
causing harm, so" yeah.
no, and but allyship, I think, is important as well. Like being
Agreed.
that ally,
Absolutely.
and also say like, hey, I will try to, yeah, be a good sport and invite people wherever I can, and open like I like to open doors for people. But
Yeah.
obviously, like having, you know, I don't know how I ended up in this sort of AI LinkedIn spot that I am as well. But I constantly think about it as well. Like, how can I include other voices in this as well? And a lot of times, like, so I partner closely with a woman called Sarah, for example. Like that's, and it's a small thing, but still, like, it's important for me to make other voices heard in this area, because first and foremost, everyone will get bored if they just listen to me, but also, like, we need to widen the perspective, because I have my perspectives, sure enough, but those are only my perspectives. And I mean, we benefit as a community, and I think this goes for, an organization as well. We benefit from different voices, different perspectives, because we come with different baggage, we come with different, you know, views and interpretations of the world as well. And if we want to create something that is, valid in our world, which I hope we do, like, we need those different perspectives. It's as easy as that. And but still, it's hard. Like, I struggle with it from time to time to
Yep.
remember myself about that. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. But even the fact that you think about it and you recognize it, that's more than others sometimes. And I love that
yeah,
point about I always say diversity of thought equals strength of thought. The more diverse perspectives you have, the stronger the approach. And it might just be certain perspectives kind of add up again to the sum of its parts. I feel like that should be the title of this podcast today. The whole of its parts, the sum of its parts. Every's voice has a different sort of background perspective, and pulling that in and threading all that together makes everything so much stronger. I think that that's brilliant.
and I
Um,
mean, I mean, it's great if you have a product as well, or a service that you want to sell to, like, a broad palette of people as well. Like,
yep.
if you wanna sell me, like, or if you wanna sell, like, a bald man's, shaver, I'm the perfect group, like, because
Right.
that is
Yeah.
me. But if you wanna do beyond that, well, then you should probably have more than just bald white men, or at least bald men in that group, right? So
Right.
it depends on like, how you what mark do you wanna make in the world, and what do you wanna sell, and do you wanna sell more or less? Like, that's yeah.
Definitely. I know in my past, I have advocated for and been very actively involved, led employee resource networks. And the women's network specifically, I actually started a women's network at the past two employers that I've worked for. And one of my pitches around like a use case or a business case for it is to say, this is like an in-house focus group of women. So if you need to ask questions about selling something, advertising, how our benefits play out to potential new hires, you have a focus group right here of people that you can ask those questions to. So having that interesting sort of perspective, I think that that's great.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm my most of my background in HR has been in learning and development. So let me just ask sort of a generic question. You can take this whatever direction you want. How do you think organizations and culture or organizations can advocate for professional development, provide the right resources, sort of situation where professional development is a priority for employees?
So, throughout my career, what I really love, and how I really think about development in general, is that I'm a strong believer in that most learning, it happens while you're at your, like, normal work, like, or your daily work. Like, I'm a strong believer in that. Not saying that, training is overrated and you shouldn't do it, because I think there's a time and place for interventions like that as well. When you go to a training, whether it's an online training or a classroom training, like, depends on the situation. But I think most trainings happen at work, and I've been advocating for that quite, almost throughout my entire career. That I think one of the most effective ways of having someone to learn a new skill is to pair them up with someone who knows a bit more about something that they're curious about, but they are yet to learn about. And I've found that insanely effective throughout my career as well. When you hire someone who is strong in a domain where the rest of the team are perhaps, learning or growing, or just sometimes also failing, in all honesty, that they can learn from and get inspired by. And you set that direction with the one that you're hiring as well, saying, like, your job here is obviously to help us with product X, Y, and Z, but it's also to help others, and that's why we hired you. Not putting them on a stage, or not necessarily putting them on a stage at least, but having that strong mindset that you're here also to learn others, what you can and what you know. And I really, really like that approach.
Basically, creating little mini subject matter experts or learning champions sort of within the organization that
Yep.
they're sort of the go-to. They're the ones that knows a little something, then they share that knowledge. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. And I mean, I have so many examples of where this has worked as well, because if you set that, like if you compare the costs as well, because people tend to say like, oh, but it's so expensive to hire this person because usually they're domain experts. But if you
Right.
compare that to sending a team of 20 people, for example, on a extensive training to really get them up to speed, like it's super cheap to hire someone who's slightly more expensive. And you also get the benefit of them actually working in the organization. So you have like it's a double win. And usually as well, people like this as well. They get this sort of elevated position a bit where you have um, platform to work with other people and learn them and like inspire them or influence them or mentor them. Yeah, I love it. So that's the way I've been treating my own team as well. The same
Yeah.
way, like what do I need to learn and where can I bring in
Right.
that competence? It's true. I laugh, but it's true.
We kind of started the conversation in your introduction talking about your AI enthusiast, your passion for HR. What inspired sort of that intersection and integration of those two concepts for you? What sort of was the start of your journey related to that?
It was so I said like curiosity has been like that's my biggest driver in life. I ended up in HR. I was a ski teacher at first, like so I started out as a ski teacher, and I was one of them people saying like I will do one season and one season only, and then I ended up doing six, and I ended up being the manager for a ski school here in Sweden, and I had 25 people roughly that I was a manager for, and I got 25 different results every week. So I said the same thing on the Monday meeting. I got 25 different results. And that sparked the initial curiosity like, why is that? Why do I get 25 different results? I say the same thing. So there's obviously something happening here, which makes this sort of thing happen. Got me into HR. And then but from the get-go, I was very certain that I was going to study computer science. And so I've always been super interested in computers, in technology, been very passionate about technology as well. I grew up in a very rural part of Sweden, and we got internet super early. My dad is super passionate about technology as well. And internet was a game changer for me because like all of a sudden, instead of being in this sort of remote isolated place, I could all of a sudden talk to people across the whole wide world. It was mind-blowing. It still is to some extent. You tend to forget that it's still
Right.
mind-blowing, that we can have this conversation like
Yeah.
seamlessly even though we're in different continents.
Yeah.
So that sparked the curiosity. So while studying HR, I founded together with a couple of friends a digital HR network and grew very fond of all things digital in relation to HR. So I've been writing and pondering about that since 2009, essentially. And then obviously AI came along, and I learned a lot myself through teaching others. And that goes back to the sort of ski school experience, I think, as well. Like I, um, I conceptualize things by talking about them. I just started to talk to people, and one of my friends, she works at H&M, and she said like, "Hey, yeah, I know that you're probably thinking about AI. Can't you come and think about AI in front of H&M?" And I was like, "Okay, I'll do that." And that sort of led me into talking more like, yeah, talking more with companies in general about it as well. So, but it's curiosity, and also
Yeah.
I love the fact that I get to be a beginner. Like there's a beauty of not knowing. And I love the fact that I can go out and I can have this sort of unstructured thoughts and I can put them out and people tend to like it and sort of hook onto it. And then I can get better as well. And I love the fact that I have the opportunity to get that kind of feedback, which helps me as well. It's lovely.
Love it. Well, Johannes, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Your curiosity has been fantastic. And thank you for sharing all your knowledge related to HR, AI, the intersection, and of course, the sum of its parts, which is going to be our
Sum of
theme
its
for
parts.
today's podcast. So thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Thanks a lot for having me.
This has been Fully Engaged with Jennifer N. Sutherland. If you're interested in discovering how the art and science of leadership can combine to create exceptional workplaces, visit us at SutherlandTalentSolutions.com. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay fully engaged.